Hey guys, it's Joel from guntoter.org. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing Meshtastic and iTAK, and we're going to talk a little bit about comparison and usage and how they can complement each other. Now, before we get into that, if you could go down in the corner, like, share, subscribe, hit those notifications, and also go down in the description and check out our Patreon page. Everything that we review here, we do by ourselves. We do that for two reasons. One, we want to make sure that you're getting the most bias-free review that we can, and we also want to be able to respond to things that you find interesting instead of being driven by like a sponsor's requirement that we review their product. So if you could help us out, a lot of these things we review do get expensive, and that would be awesome. So with all that said, I really should have probably made this video first instead of making it last, but it is what it is. So this is going to be kind of an overview of the two apps, and then you can go and watch the more in-depth reviews of each, where I walk through each of the functions and each of the screens. So quick overview, what is iTAK? Well, if you're familiar with iTAK, iTAK is essentially a stripped down version of iTAK for the iPhone. It is an official product of the TAK Product Center. It was developed under contract. I believe it was a DHS contract. If you are used to the DoD, obviously the DoD uses Android hardware. But the DoD has the ability to basically mandate that everyone within DoD use the Android platform, and so they only need iTAK and its compatibility with Android. On DHS's side, on the other hand, they have to coordinate across multiple agencies, whether it's federal, state, or local, and they really don't have a lot of say in what kind of equipment those people have of these different agencies. Individual officers, for example, might be issued iPhones, they might be issued Androids, but DHS has no control over that. It's all up to the local agency. So DHS needed the ability for those other agencies that might be running iPhones to at least have some sort of access to iTAK and its capabilities. So they contracted out, and the result is iTAK. The full description is right there on the slide if you haven't been reading that already. And that is right off of iTAK's description in the App Store. So some of the capabilities, this is the list that iTAK claims that they can do. With that said, some of these work better than others. For example, the offline mapping. From what I have gathered, going around and reading like the various Discord chats and stuff, people are having trouble getting the offline maps loaded. They're also having trouble with servers. There are several workarounds out there, and I'm going to be playing with those as we go so that I can make a video on setting up your connection to the server, and hopefully also on setting up your offline maps, because I think that's a very important functionality. But this is the list of what iTAK says they can do. And as you can see, it's a lot of the things that iTAK can do, but not all of them. So the reason for that is that Apple silos their stuff, and it does not have the interoperability that iTAK does, but I'll get further into that here in a minute. Meshtastic, on the other hand, is an open source project. All their code is open source. You can go in there, you can play around with it, you can make it do all sorts of stuff, and they encourage that. They encourage people to go out and make their own capabilities and their own versions. It operates using LoRa boards, like $20, $30 boards that you can buy. It creates its own mesh network and allows you to see where the other nodes are on a map, as well as communicate completely without any sort of internet connectivity. And it is actually encrypted, which is also kind of cool. So a comparison between the two, and these are kind of ones that I thought were important features. Uh, if you have another feature that you have a question on that you think is an important one, drop it in the comments and I'll try to get an answer for you. So, does it require internet? For both of these, it's kind of a yes and no. So iTAK does require a connection because without it, you can't do any of the communication, and also the map is not fully functional unless you load an offline map, which again, a lot of people are having trouble with. Meshtastic, on the other hand, does not require the internet for any sort of communication. However, just like with iTAK, the map functionality is limited without the internet. And the reason for that is that the primary maps for both iTAK and Meshtastic are the basically just it's an Apple map. It's an overlay on an Apple map. So anyone who's tried to navigate when your cell service went out and you've tried to play around with the map, you know that you can't zoom in because you start to lose some of the fine detail, especially if you're trying to use the satellite uh, imagery. So it really does limit the map functionality for both without the internet. Uh, but for iTAK especially, you lose your communications piece, which is really a key function of either of these. Um, can you store offline maps? For iTAK, yes, at least in theory. There's a button that says you can install maps, but at the same time, um, it's a little gray as to how functional that actually is yet. As far as Meshtastic goes, no offline maps. All you've got is, at least as far as I can tell, I'm still looking, but as far as I can tell, all you can use is the Apple Map overlay. So there is no way for you to do additional maps if you wanted to. Does it support offline communications? For iTAK, no. If you plan on using iTAK for communication, you have to have some sort of connectivity. Whereas Meshtastic, on the other hand, is designed specifically to communicate offline in an off-grid scenario. Now, with that said, iTAK, I have seen some rumors on the Discord that they are working on a GoTenna connectivity, which would be awesome because at that point you would have that offline communication as well as the situational awareness piece, which is what iTAK is really kind of geared towards. Does it allow mission planning? iTAK, yes, that is what iTAK is for, is situational awareness, mission planning, command and control. That is what TAK in general is designed for. Um, you cannot do that with Meshtastic. Meshtastic basically just lets you see where someone is, and that's it. Now, I'll mention it here and I'll mention it again down below. There is some incompatibility right now with the full version of, or the Android version, I should say, of iTAK. I call it the full version because it does everything iTAK was designed for, whereas iTAK does not. Um, that is getting worked out. They're trying to iron out some of those incompatibilities as far as the various icons and other functions, mission planning functions, but they're not quite there yet. Does it allow Blue Force tracking? For iTAK, absolutely it does, but you need internet because that's how iTAK communicates. It has to be on a server to actually perform the vast majority of its functions. Meshtastic, yes, it does allow Blue Force tracking, and it allows it completely offline. However, it is limited basically to just the position. Like you can't drop points, you can't do any of that. You can't help someone navigate. Um, and again, the map functionality is limited without the internet, but you can see roughly where people are and you can communicate with them. Um, are the apps functionally compatible with their Android equivalent? Yes, for both. Again, with iTAK, they're ironing out some of the kinks in it, but it will be mostly compatible with the full version of iTAK once they get that worked out. Meshtastic, yes. I have not noticed. There's like a feature or two that's slightly different in the Apple version, but honestly, it's close enough that if you can run one, you can run the other one without any issues. And are they available in the App Store? iTAK, yes. It is the complete version is available in the App Store. However, for Meshtastic, version 1.2, which is the most current version right now, is not available in the App Store. You can only get it through TestFlight. They are trying to get uh, version 1.3 certified so they can put it through the App Store and you can get it, but they are not there yet. So what does all this mean? Um, because of how Apple silos their apps, like we talked about, Apple does not let apps talk to each other, just in general. Um, so because of that, iTAK will probably never be as capable as ATAK. One of the big functionalities of ATAK is the fact that you can do everything within ATAK instead of having to switch between apps. You can communicate, you can do your mission planning, you can, run a drone, you can do all sorts of stuff. Uh, you're not going to be able to do that with iTAK because you're not going to be able to do the plugins like you can do with ATAK. In fact, one of the things that kind of annoys me about iTAK is the fact that you can't use the forwarder plugin like you can with ATAK. With ATAK, you can install ATAK, install Meshtastic, and install a forwarder plugin that allows you to transmit some of your ATAK data over the Meshtastic network. You can't do that with iTAK. Now, hopefully, if they get the Gotenna compatibility, you will be able to do that over the Gotenna network. Now, you'll be locked into a little bit of the Gotenna proprietary stuff, but it's better than not having the offline communications. Um, However, iTAK can still be very useful if you are prepared and if you understand its limitations and the limitations of Meshtastic as well. So Meshtastic's primary value right now is communication. Um, its situational awareness tools, honestly, are not going to take the place of even iTAK, much less ATAK. So, if you're just like a group of Boy Scouts out hiking and you just want to know where everyone is, sure, Meshtastic works for that. If you need to do any sort of mission planning or command and control, uh, Meshtastic is really not going to work for that. You need like the TAK family. Uh, iTAK can still be useful off grid. It's going to take more work, but it can still be useful. You're just going to have to do a lot of manual input, and you're going to have the maps installed prior to the incident. Now, if you're thinking, well, how am I supposed to know when the incident is going to occur? Well, let's look at it this way. Do you prep everything else right before you know the incident is coming, or do you have a plan set up whereby you are constantly replenishing your stocks and checking your batteries, checking your food supplies, checking your water, checking all that stuff? Do the same thing for iTAK, right? Go in, once a quarter, once a month, whatever you want to do, and just make sure you've updated to the most recent maps. Most places, the map shouldn't be changing too terribly much, especially if you and the people you're working with have the local knowledge, so that if there are changes, you can at least work around that. But you can work out a plan whereby you can keep your maps updated and ready to go year round. Using both apps and using them complementing each other allows you to keep that situational awareness and exercise kind of the command and control, but also have the communication in an off-grid scenario. And yes, it's going to be a pain switching back and forth. Yes, it's going to be a pain entering stuff manually, but it can be done. And otherwise you might be manually writing things down. So one way or the other, you're probably going to be doing something manually, whether it's on the app or whether it's on a piece of paper or a chart or a map or something like that. Um, and this is all talking about off-grid because I think realistically you have to plan for the worst, which would be a completely off-grid scenario. And then you can hope for the best, which is where you would have connectivity, like cell connectivity especially, in which case iTAK is probably going to be your superior choice for most users. Um, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, the cell towers are really resilient and all that. I don't think we'll be in an off-grid scenario. Well, I really hope not, honestly. But it's better to have the plan for an off-grid scenario and have practiced it, and then not need the plan and be able to do everything in iTAK than it is to say, oh, I'm not worried about that, and then suddenly you don't have the internet anymore because, I don't know, the backbone went down or whatever, and you can't communicate. You're just sitting there staring at a map, which is cool, but not terribly useful when you can't talk to anybody about it. So with all that said, just kind of in summary, while on the Android platform, you would integrate all this stuff into iTAK. You would integrate your Meshtastic with your iTAK, and you could do everything in iTAK. You can't do that on iPhone. And honestly, you're not going to be able to do that in iPhone. Again, with the limited exception of possibly the GoTenna connection. Um, but you can still use these two apps to complement each other for communications and for situational awareness and mission planning and command and control. Uh, you're going to have to work that out amongst your team. If you have mostly Android users and like one or two iPhone users, uh, you can work out with them what the plan's going to be so that they understand the limitations, you understand the limitations, and then everybody can work together. But that's a matter of practice. So if you have any questions about anything that I kind of touched on, please let me know. Go down in the comments and ask away. Can't guarantee you I'm going to know the answer right off the top of my head, but I'll do my best to find it. One of my goals with this series is to kind of go out, find as much information as I can in the various places it's scattered, like the Discord, and then in a whole bunch of, Google Doc repositories and everything else, and try to compile it so it's in an easy to access place where you can get to it and you can get set up without having to search all over the internet yourself. So that's the goal with that. Again, if you want to support us, likes, shares, subscribes, those are awesome, as well as support through our Patreon page. That really, really helps us out because honestly, I'm going to need a new computer here shortly because this one's about to call it good. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate all my viewers, and I've had some great discussions with people in the comments, especially around iTAK and like Baofangs and comms and all that stuff. So it seems like this is something people want to hear about, and I'll do my best to get you the best information I can. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.